Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is really big data. What is big data? And in this particular case, I'm referring to public records. In the real estate business, big data is public records. Well, let's talk about one number in particular, square footage. Where does the square footage in public records come from? Why is it created? How do they use it? What is it? We all know what it is. We talk about it all the time, but most of us don't know how that number is created. If you have any local meetings with realtors or just appraisers, inviting the local tax assessors a great person to have come and speak and let them explain to you how the process works. But really, in the assessor's role, they don't need precise square footage. They never enter a house. These guys come by, and it depends on where you live, maybe 2 years, maybe every 4 years, in some cases 8 years. And, they have a huge number of houses to inspect in a day. They're worried more about how many they get done, not what the quality is. And that's their job. That's okay. Having precise square footage was always the role of the MLS and realtors until public records became available online. And that's where the term official record, was invented by a realtor that didn't want to measure a house, and it changed everything. But if you think about it, an assessor goes out to a house, walks around it, and maybe they take a wheel and measure it. Maybe even they take, a tape measure and measure it. Without going in the house, the inside of the garage, can have jut outs. You just can't tell what that shape is. You can't go upstairs. You can't go downstairs. You always see pictures of somebody, the tax inspector looking in the basement and saying, does that look like a bedroom back there? Is there a bathroom? And then they're looking around to make sure where the dog is. You can't get quality information from an exterior only inspection. And I always talk about the worst offenders in public records are houses with upper and lower levels. Because just like the basement, they're trying to look in and see what's what on the upper level. They have no way to know what's there. And if it's a 2-level house, and it's a box, well, that's one thing. But if you've got these 1.5-story designs and, it's no more 1950 ranch style homes throughout these neighborhoods. We have so many complex designs these days. Some of these 1.5-story designs, heck, it's hard for people going inside to come up with quality measurements. You try guesstimating that from the street and you're in real trouble. But that's okay. That is not the assessor's job. That is one small part of the information that they gather. So if anybody in the real estate business takes the square footage data from the tax department, it's like a square peg in a round hole. That information was never meant to go together. The square footage data was never designed or intended to be used in the real estate industry, guys. It was just, nobody ever went and talked to the tax department and said, hey, we want to use this data. What standard are you using, or how do you come up with these measurements? It's got nothing to do. The tax department is an individual, separate entity, has nothing to do with the real estate business. They have no liability, no responsibility for square footage data. It's just not their job. Big data, as far as public records and the square footage information, and if you've ever watched a class I've done, I talk about price per square foot, and we all say that we don't use it, but it's on every it's a mandatory adjustment on every appraisal form. And when realtors create prices doing a CMA and even automated valuation models, what do they use? Price per square foot. So whether we like it or not, it's a fact of this business. The realtors create the prices, and then us appraisers go out and prove that they're right. or wrong sometimes, whatever the case may be. But it comes down to a realtor taking a square footage number that is very likely wrong and plugging it into a price per square foot formula, probably using comparables that some AVM picked out, which, they probably come up with 50 different comparables and average the price per square foot. So it's no wonder sometimes we have trouble coming up, matching a sales price. We got so much reform going on in the appraisal industry. Maybe some of that reform needs to go back towards the MLS. Bad data in, bad data out, and we can talk about big data all you want. And does big data have a place in the real estate business? Absolutely. There's a lot of times when a bank doesn't need a full appraisal, somebody's borrowing 30% on there. It's okay to use an AVM, and an AVM is not going to put appraisers out of business. However, if you really want to know the value of the house, you cannot rely on this AVM technology. They're still depending on a price per square foot formula using incorrect data, and two wrongs definitely don't make a right. So anyway, with big data, it's created by somebody that doesn't need precise information, and it's not the way this system was ever designed or intended. It's just kind of, flowed along that way without any direction over the past 20 years or so. So anyway, big data is not the answer. Better data is the answer, and less